So I'm going to quickly sketch this object right here. And in order to do sketches, if you're going to be drawing based off of an object, it's usually easiest if you keep it in one spot specifically. Those angles can get kind of thrown off a little bit if you keep moving this around. It's going to look different from different angles, and so what we want to do is make sure that we're always kind of looking at it the same way. Okay. Whenever we're drawing, I'm going to try to, for us, you might fill up half the page. Maybe you have it vertical like this and you fill up about half the page. What I do see fairly often whenever people start sketching is they're really worried about the amount of paper we have. And so they'll say, okay, here's my sketch right here. And that's really not as big as we really want it. We want it larger than this. We want to be able to see it. We want to see some detail. This is a fairly simple object, and so we're not going to have a ton of detail, but we still want the drawing to be big enough to include a lot of detail. Okay, so in that case, I'm going to try to fill up the page. It looks just a little bit better if you do that. In this case, I elected not to tape my paper down. Often for technical drawings, you're going to. In this case, we're not going to. Okay? We want to make sure that this object, when we draw it, stays proportional. What I mean by that is we don't want it to look stretched this way. We don't want it looking compacted this way. We want it to look, the same size and shape as this on our paper. Okay? One way you can actually do that is you can look and you see, okay, right here on this object is a little part. I can easily measure that, and I can compare it to, let's say, the height. I can compare it to the overall width or length right here. And so what you can actually do is you put your thumb here, you put your pencil, like the far end of your pencil on the far end of what you're measuring. You put your thumb right there. Now I know that this is a unit, and if I then turn it like this, I can see that this is about, we'll say, 2 of those units tall. So I can start with drawing that, and I can also figure out my angle. And so hold my pencil up, that looks about the same angle, and so I put it down to the paper and I end up with this. So I just drew this line right here, and then I'm going to draw this vertical line right here, and I know it's about 2 of those. So I'm going to compare. Okay, we got 1, 2. That gets me to right about there, and there we go. We've got this. Now for these drawings, I'm drawing these are fairly dark lines. That's mostly so you can see it. Ideally, we would have 2 different types of lines with most of our drawings. One of those is about this right here. You can see they're very faint. Only I, as the person drawing, can really see those. But then we also have darker ones. Usually call these construction lines, and then these are object lines. Okay, so light construction lines, darker object lines, like that. Okay, in this case, I'm going to draw them fairly dark, but then I'm going to really make them even darker later on. Okay, it's a good idea. So I'm comparing. So I've got 1 for this, and then there's 1 just under 2 this way. So that's 1 just under 2 right there. So that's kind of where that end line is. And then if I go from there, I can actually, and I'm drawing, so I'm looking at the angle here. This bottom angle is about right there. If I'm drawing, notice I'm not erasing. I'm just kind of like really roughly drawing in the overall length. So if we compare that, we've got 1, 2, about 3. And so from here we got compare. So 1, 2, 3 gets me to about right here. Okay, and then I like to kind of box it out as though it were a full rectangle. And so I'm going to draw that. The angle here is about like that, so I can draw here and here. If I'm not happy with it, I can erase or just draw a different type of line. And right here, I've kind of attempted to draw the outer shape of this. Now, one thing I'm noticing is it looks fairly long here, but it doesn't look wide enough. I know this thing is like this wide. It should be wider, and that's okay. I'll just make it wider. These are not the types of drawings where you actually measure in the way that you don't grab a ruler, you don't, and you notice I'm not even using a straight edge. Usually it's paper, pencil, that's it. Maybe an eraser, sometimes you use pen, then you can erase. But now this shape is overall fairly close to proportional. Got the big shape of it. Now what I need to do is go in and kind of look at these smaller details. And so I've already decided this point is right here, and so I see it angles down, comparing that. So I'm putting my pencil up against it and then holding it up against the paper, and that puts my angle right about there. I can see this is at a different angle, and so I can put that there and then put that there, and I can see that it's like that. Now this has like a line, a break, and a line, but because these two line up, I just drew one, and then I'll be able to measure, and this doesn't go all the way. There's an angle there, so let's see. I think that's about where this ends, and I'm now just focusing on this portion right here. From there, I can, and I'm just picking spots, kind of how I want to. So that angle, okay, right there. That's about the same. Drawing that in. We're missing a few lines, so at this corner, I can see it goes down about there. And then this is about that angle there, and that goes right about there. And so we start with the larger shape, then we figure out a kind of a slightly smaller shape, and then we figure out a slightly smaller shape, and then we figure out the even smaller shapes from there. It's still fairly light. I might notice that this was ideally supposed to be a vertical line, so I might fix that. That's okay. And I'm just going to try to get the overall shape of it, try to get things proportional and things like that. Once I've gotten this mostly blocked out, I have very light lines right now. I can go in and I can put in those object lines, okay? And I'm going to do this mostly for demonstration. You'll probably just have the difference between, a construction line and an object line be, well, I didn't push hard here, or I did push hard there. That's the difference. For demonstration purposes, I'm going to use a Sharpie just so you can see it a little better on your screen. Okay, and so I've used my construction lines. I've figured out where those parts are going to be. I had to fix a few things. That's okay. I fixed them, and all of a sudden I've got this here sketch. And usually I would just take my pencil and push harder. And in art, you can actually, like, we've got our number 2 pencils. That means something. You can actually get like a number 3 H or B pencil, and it's going to draw a thicker line or darker line than a number 2 B. So we've got that. We've got the rough shape of it all figured out right there. The next thing we do is we take this and we try to shade it. We can kind of see with how the light is. The light's fairly even in this room, but what I'm noticing is there's this top part is lighter. There's kind of a darker area here, but even this is kind of lighter, and then this is kind of darker as well. Just how the light's hitting it. If we had more of a strong light, like a light from the side, we'd notice those shadows a little more. but we still can see that there's a lot of variation in, you know, light areas and dark areas, and we want to somehow capture that. And what we're usually going to do is shade. And I usually write like this. I draw like this. Sometimes whenever I'm trying to make a really long straight line, I'm gonna not use my wrist so much, but I'm actually gonna try to use my entire arm to do that. When I'm sketching, I'm actually gonna hold my pencil in a different way. You have a lot more lead right here, and you're trying to, so when you're shading, often you'll put it like this. And I'm noticing there's a lot of vertical lines. That's why I'm going to do that right here. I'm going to use the vertical line, the fact that my pencil's going up and down. And then there's, you know, there's some darker areas here, you know, so I'm going to put in those dark areas. And this is slightly darker than the other area. So I'm going to shade in a little more. You can take your pencil and blend it in if you want. Right here I can see there's some definitely milling marks, lines where you can see where this was actually cut, and so they kind of are in a curve like this. So I'm going to go and try to follow that curve. Again, I'm mostly using my elbow for this because it gives me that full range of motion, whereas if I was using my wrist like I normally write, I'm not going to have as much range of motion. Now this is lighter than the, I'm just trying to show those. This, it seems a little bit lighter than this side, so I'm gonna stay there. And then this, I'm actually gonna keep going a little bit more to get that shaded just a little more, because this should be darker, should be showing up darker than this face, because that's what I see. Okay. Then from there you can continue on and you know, add some shading. This is the lightest spot right here, and so I'm going to really be gentle about how much I am actually shading right there. And I'm mostly using, you know, my forearm because it gives me that quick and easy motion. And then you also have the side of the pencil holding it different than when you're drawing, because it's easier this way, and it gives me access to the side right here, and it allows me to shade in that way. Okay. And so from here, what I would do is continue shading. If it's a spot that seems darker, if there's little details, again, you kind of go like, here's a darker area here. So I'm gonna, you know, add in and push harder if I want it darker, and keep going over it if it needs to be darker from there. If I overstep my bounds, erase maybe. But there we go, finger to blend. And that is a sketch right there. Okay.